In this video, I'd like to discuss how snapshots fit into the CCC backup strategy. First, what is a snapshot? A snapshot is a point-in-time representation of a volume on a hard drive. Every file on the volume is frozen within the snapshot, perfectly capturing its state at the exact moment that the snapshot was created. So even if you change or delete a file later, and then that file is modified or removed from your backup volume, the file in its previous state remains available within the snapshot. So in other words, snapshots give you the ability to restore older versions of your files and files that were deleted since previous backups. Another way to think about snapshots is that these are storing versions of your backup. Snapshots are available for APFS formatted destinations. When you select a destination, CCC prompts you to use APFS and to enable snapshot support. That prompt comes from the Backup Volume Setup Assistant. The Backup Volume Setup Assistant will ask if you want to use the volume exclusively for the backup task and gives you the option to enable snapshots and to retain backup history. When snapshot support is enabled on your destination, you'll see a badge here on the destination selector icon. Whenever a backup task runs, CCC will compare the source and the destination, copy any differences to the destination, and then at the very end of the task, it will create a snapshot on that destination. If you'd like to manage snapshots, you can click on the destination selector and choose Manage Snapshots on the volume name. Any snapshots created on this volume will be listed here in the Snapshots table. In this case, we can see that CCC has been creating snapshots on an hourly basis, which corresponds to the hourly scheduling of my backup task. CCC won't retain all of these snapshots indefinitely. Rather, it will impose some thinning and some pruning metrics. By default, CCC will keep one snapshot per hour for the past day, one snapshot per day for the past month, and then weekly snapshots thereafter, as long as there's enough free space. Depending on your needs, you can customize these retention settings. So in this case, for example, I have two backup volumes that are both sharing space on the same disk. Maybe I want to favor snapshots on one of those volumes versus the other, or maybe they run on different schedules and I want to make sure that they're sharing space democratically. To customize retention settings, click this Customize button. There are two separate types of customizations that we can make. We can customize how CCC will thin snapshots and how it will prune snapshots. Snapshot thinning refers to the removal of snapshots across the full spectrum of snapshots that we have. The idea with snapshot thinning is that we want to have good granularity of snapshots available within the most recent period of time. So in the past 24 hours, I want to have hourly snapshots because that's when you're most likely to say, oh, I just deleted that file, I want to go grab it. Or I want to grab a version that I was working on this morning, or mid-afternoon, but then further back in time, we don't need quite as much granularity. So to make the most efficient use of space, we thin out snapshots favoring the most recently created snapshots over the snapshots created long ago. But then at the same time, we want to keep snapshots as far back in time as possible so that we have some historic record to go back to. Pruning is the opposite. Pruning will lop off the oldest snapshots. That's typically based on disk usage or on how much free space we have on the backup volume. By default, CCC will aim to free up a minimum of 30 gigabytes. Optionally, you could say, I don't think I'm ever going to use a snapshot that's older than 3 months, so I want to delete any snapshots that are older than 90 days. Alternatively, maybe I want to limit snapshot disk usage to 100 gigabytes, so this is a good opportunity to limit the snapshot usage of any individual volume on your backup disk. One other thing I should point out here is that snapshot thinning and pruning occur at the beginning of the backup task. So in this case, we have a minimum free space of 30 gigabytes defined. What that means is that at the beginning of the task, CCC will remove the oldest snapshots until we have at least 30 gigabytes of free space. But then it's going to copy files to the destination. So if you're looking at your backup volume and you notice that free space is below your defined threshold, just keep in mind that this value is applied at the beginning of the backup task before we copy files to the destination. And the point of that is that we want to retain at least 30 gigabytes of space so that we can copy new stuff to the destination. That 30 gigabyte default works for most backups. In most cases, we don't need to copy more than 30 gigabytes of content to the backup each day. If your backup tasks tend to need to copy more than that, CCC will remove additional snapshots in the middle of the backup task to make space available. You can make your backup a little bit more efficient, however, by setting a higher minimum free space threshold. In most cases, though, you don't need to customize any of these settings. The defaults are designed to provide a good breadth and depth of snapshot coverage. Okay, let's take a look at these snapshots listed up here in the snapshots table. There's a couple things to point out. First, if you want to see what that backup volume looks like at any one of these moments in time, simply double-click on it and it will mount that snapshot in the Finder. Then you can navigate it like an ordinary volume, and you could restore individual items from here via the Finder. That's one of the benefits of a CCC backup. It's completely non-proprietary, and you don't have to use CCC to get access to your data. You can simply mount the snapshot, and in fact you could mount the snapshot and disk utility as well, and then you can copy files off of it in the Finder. But it should look exactly the way your source volume looked like back at that previous moment in time. Okay, I'll just unmount that. Alright, we can also create snapshots in an ad hoc manner here in the Snapshots table. Let's suppose that I'm about to do a bunch of reorganization on my source. Prior to making that big change, I want to create a snapshot on the backup volume to capture that current state and make a note to myself about the significance of this particular snapshot. So I'll right-click in the Snapshots table and choose Create Protected Snapshot. And I will add a comment, Pre-org Snapshot. And now I have this protected snapshot that CCC will not delete during any snapshot thinning or pruning. Later on, you can hover your mouse over this icon for that reminder. Oh yes, I created that snapshot before I did my reorganization. So later, if you regret any of the changes, or if you're missing something, and even if your backups have already run and applied the changes to the destination, you can go back here, mount that snapshot, and recover the files from that snapshot. You can also remove that protection if you're happy with your changes and you're ready to roll it back into the regular snapshot thinning and pruning. Simply remove protection and now it's an ordinary snapshot. There's one other thing I'd like to point out in the snapshots table, and I'd like to do that on this other volume, and that's regarding the size column. There's two conclusions that people make when they see the size column. First, they see 9.7 megabytes and think, gee, that just doesn't seem like very much data. How can I restore older versions of my files from a snapshot if it's so small? This size is not actually an indication of how much data is referenced by that snapshot. Rather, it's an indication of how much deleted content is uniquely referenced by this particular snapshot. If I were to delete this snapshot, I would expect to get 9.7 megabytes of additional free space on this volume. But of course, if I were to mount that snapshot, I can restore 100% of the data that's referenced by that snapshot. The other thing people want to do in the snapshots table is they want to take all of these sizes, add them up, and then compare that sum to the total snapshot disk usage value, and these are not comparable values. To understand snapshot sizing more clearly, I created another volume called Snapshot Size Demo, and I'll create a file there and some snapshots, and we'll see how the snapshot sizing works. Alright, so I have one file on the Snapshot Size Demo volume. It is 2.34 gigabytes, and I'm going to create 3 snapshots on this volume. 1, 2, and 3. We don't need comments for these. We're just creating these so each one of them has a reference to that movie file. The first thing that you'll notice here is that total snapshot disk usage is 0 kilobytes, and each individual snapshot is 0 kilobytes. And that's because we haven't deleted anything yet. Each snapshot has a reference to that movie file, but we haven't deleted the file from the current volume, so deleting these snapshots isn't going to change the free space at all. Next, I'll go ahead and delete that file in the Finder. And then empty the trash. And then we'll refresh this snapshot disk usage, and now we see that total snapshot disk usage is 2.3 gigabytes, yet each individual snapshot is still showing 0 kilobytes, and that's because each one of these snapshots still has a reference to that file. We can go ahead and mount these snapshots to confirm that. Each one has a reference to that file, so we could restore that file from any one of these snapshots. Alright, I'll go ahead and unmount these. Next, if we were to delete any individual snapshot, that won't free up any space, and that's because these other 2 snapshots have a reference to that file. So I'll go ahead and do that. Delete this snapshot, and we can see that nothing has changed, free space has not changed. If I take these 2 snapshots together, however, and delete them at the same time, then I'll be deleting the last reference holder to that movie file, and then in that case, we will free up 2.34 gigabytes of space. All right, the last thing I want to show regarding snapshots, and again we'll switch volumes, is CCC's Snapshot Browser. The Snapshot Browser allows you to view the content of all of your snapshots across time and to also look for specific items. So just to give an example, I deleted a movie from my media volume and then the backup ran, so now that file is absent from the source and the current version of the backup. I'm just going to select some snapshots. You could select at least one and as many as all of them, but if you plan on searching for something, I do recommend reducing the number of items that you select because CCC has to index each snapshot, so searching will take longer if you select all. So I'll select a handful of these and then choose View in Snapshot Browser from the contextual menu. And then let's see, the item I deleted was a movie, so if I open up the disclosure triangle for movies, I can see right there, here's that deleted item. So if I wanted to restore that item, I simply right-click and choose Restore this file, and then specify where I want to save that file to. Let's just save it to the desktop, and there we go. I've saved that. I've restored that file. The other thing we can do in the Snapshot Browser is that we can search for content. So let's suppose I've deleted a file and I can remember the name roughly, but I can't remember for the life of me where I had that file. So rather than drilling down through a bunch of folders, we can just enter a search term over here. CCC will index those 3 snapshots and then show me all of the search results. And then when I select one of the search results, that item will be revealed in the browser. So here it is. This is the file I wanted to restore. I could restore this file, or I could compare to other versions that I happen to have. All right, we've covered a lot of snapshot related topics, and of course there's more. We have some other videos that discuss how to restore from your backups, including how to restore older versions of your files and files that were deleted since the previous backup. Find those other videos in our YouTube channel. Lastly, look for additional tips in the Learn How-To menu. We've got some tip-led product tours that show you all sorts of things that you can do within CCC.